Look at Cuphead at the start of the game. He's so happy, unaware of the horrors he's about to face. It's just really funny to me that he's just so jovial at the start, and then by the end he's like, oh fuck! Cuphead bosses are one of two things. Bosses that make you realize your improvement as you go along, motivating you to take them out, or bosses that are so frustratingly difficult that you can't wait to be done with them because you've been at it for 40 minutes. But one thing we can agree on is that each boss is amazing in its own way, eye-catching and unique with its own series of forms that keep you on your toes throughout and make you strategize at every moment of battle. There wasn't a single boss in the game that made me think, this one is slightly underwhelming. No, Cuphead keeps a remarkable and thrilling pace throughout that brings me back time and time and time and time again, even well after completing the game. The beauty of these battles is they aren't designed to be beaten in one try. How the fuck was I supposed to know his head was gonna fly at me there on the first run? Final Fantasy X is my favorite game ever, but my main gripe is that some of the bosses are underwhelming because you beat them in one go. But Cuphead thrives at making bosses really feel like, well, bosses. So in this video, I'm gonna show off what are, in my opinion, the top 5 most epic showdowns. Difficulty is a factor, of course, but visuals, mechanics, and overall memorability will also be determining factors. So, without further ado, here's my top 5 bosses in Cuphead.
Here's a real high-class bout. It's on!
Starting off at number 5, we have the Bee. Now this was one of the tougher battles for me personally, but while it wasn't the hardest, it does the best job of combining the two main elements of the game, the boss fights and the platforming coin levels. The battle is all about being aware of your movement options while still being in position to attack. The constant honey chasing you at the bottom, combined with an onslaught of projectiles, makes this probably the most movement-intense non-aerial fight in the game. The Bee's hitboxes are constantly changing, making you adjust on each moving platform, and oftentimes it can lead to difficult situations to dodge her attacks. In her final form, she becomes a giant plane which forces you to constantly move upward while shooting down at her and dodging her attacks. Overall, this one got a little frustrating at times, but I love the platforming design throughout the fight, and it takes the best of both worlds and combines them into one experience.
This match will get red hot. Now go!
It's no secret that Cuphead has mind-blowing visuals, and this Genie fight is, in my opinion, the pinnacle of this aspect of the game. I loved every moment of this fight, and each form was fucking awesome. The second form really just lets you focus on the great flying controls, which I really enjoyed, but then throws you right back into it with his next phase, which is him in a golden sarcophagus that contains the universe itself as he spits planets at you. Who comes up with this shit? It's amazing! After another creative form, where he attacks with a puppet of all things, he becomes a giant version of himself, kinda like Genie Jafar, and it's probably the hardest part to dodge attacks. Overall, this is the coolest boss in the game visually, and the fact that it lets you really get a feel of how well-tuned the flying controls are really adds to the fun of this battle.
A brawl is surely brewing. You're up!
At number 3, we have the Robot, and good lord is this fight difficult. This is the hardest boss in the game in my opinion, and there's so many reasons why. The duration of the fight, the tight windows that you can maneuver, the huge hitboxes on his attacks, the limited amount of things to parry. This mad scientist is a sadistic bastard, and it's probably why he lives in a junkyard, because he trashes the fuck out of you countless times. The final phase of this fight is the most stressful thing in the game. It's hard enough to get there with ample life left, but the duration of this phase, combined with the literal hundreds of things you have to dodge, makes it seem like an eternity. But oh man, when you finally take him out, it was the most satisfying moment in Cuphead for me.
A great slam and then some. Here goes!
The number 2 spot goes to the Phantom Train, and this was really close to being number 1 for me. Some say this is the hardest boss in the game, and for good reason. This fight implements a really cool parry mechanic, where you constantly have to change the direction of the cart you're on to avoid being hit, or to hit the various forms. This is made even more difficult by the falling blocks that move the cart against your will, so you have to constantly parry them as well to maintain your positioning, all while attacking and dodging. The whole aesthetic of the battle is really clean, and while a lot goes on, it doesn't feel overwhelming. It's high paced from start to finish, and even though it took me a while to beat, I never even got close to becoming frustrated because I had so much fun with this one. It's a memorable boss, and it's the one that I always think about when someone mentions Cuphead.
well battle. And begin!
And my number one boss in Cuphead is none other than King Dice. It's quite apparent to me that this boss had by far the most effort put into it, and he's the most unique of them all. The fight doesn't even start until you hit the dice, and depending on what you roll, you move a number of spaces. This can lead to extra life or just facing an extra boss as you progress, so you have to time the rolls perfectly. Each battle leading up to King Dice himself is a different element of gambling or casinos brought to life, from poker chips to dominoes to a Russian roulette ballerina, so creative by the way, to a cigar and even booze. Man, this really takes alcohol-related deaths to a whole new level. When you finally get to King Dice himself, it's really hard to avoid taking hits, so the challenge of this all is clearing his minions without taking damage, all while maintaining how much of your special you have when you arrive to the final phase. This fight was geniusly designed and executed, and is no doubt my favorite fight in all of Cuphead. And there you have it. Every boss in this game was awesome, but those are just my 5 personal favorites. This game really makes you want to beat the shit out of all the bosses, which is great, until you realize that they're all Cuphead's friends, and he had to fight them against his will to save them. Man, that is some fucked up shit.
The rest is empty with no brain, but the clever nerd, the best MC with no chain you ever heard. Take it from the Tech 9 holder. David don't know they neck shine from Shinola. Everything that glitter ain't fish scale. Let me think, don't let her faint, get Ishmael. A shot of Jack got her back, it's not an act stack. Forgot about the cackalack, holla back.